Oh, wow. Wow. Listen to how crisp it is. And
That was crisp, like a perfectly ripe apple.
oh, like this one,
Like
Chris?
that one.
Like this one that I picked yesterday at Beardsley Cider Mill and Orchard
Perfecto.
in Shelton. We're just like,
Ooh,
supporting these
Shelton.
local businesses. Yeah, and I feel like my nails are kind of matching this apple.
Oh, look at that. Now that apple, that's an apple you give a teacher right there.
Yeah, right?
That gives to you give that one to Miss Crabapple.
Miss Crabapple.
Look who's here. Philip J. Curtis is here.
Hey, midnight.
He's back to his first through the door.
Yes, he
No,
is. Well, and we are very excited because
Peter
Phil
Nelson's
will be
watching
one of our
baseball.
guests. Will be one of our guests next week.
That's true.
Um, yeah, it's going to be amazing. And oh, Pete Nelson just popped in and he's saying, "Sorry, guys, watching baseball. Well, keep an eye on us.
Just turn the sound down on the baseball. You don't need the sound.
What do you need
And
the sound
uh,
for?"
right, you have the soundtrack of poetry and literature.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Phil, he isn't ready. Midnight's ready. Midnight's ready.
Midnight's ready. Midnight is
So
always ready.
yeah, we're very excited. Yeah, next week we have our fall open mic coming up. We have several amazing special guests, and we will have two open mic features. John Chance Acevedo and Philip J. Curtis, aka Midnight, from Put It in the Chat. Also, our dear friends who really support us here and are just such lovely people. But we'll give our official welcome in a few minutes. But we're very excited to have with us tonight Morrow Dowdle and Heather Frimmer. And we will get into our reading in just a little bit. We're just warming up, welcoming everyone in. Chris, what sober October beverage are you enjoying today?
This is it's called Run Wild.
Ooh. Oh, is this not sober October?
This is sober October.
Oh, it
This
is
is
sober. Okay, sorry.
look
It's
at
an
the top.
IPA.
Non-alcoholic brew. See that? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So and it's actually pretty tasty. Who knew
That's
that,
nice.
that these non-alcoholic beers could actually taste kind of like beer?
Well, here and there, I've tried a non-alcoholic beer, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Everything that I like about beer, it had going on. The sort of, uh, yeah. Well, I don't know how to describe beer, but it was good.
I'll tell you how to describe it. It's tasty or it's not tasty.
It's
Those
not tasty.
are my criteria.
My friend Noah could definitely get on board with that description. That is kind of the way that he would describe these. It's tasty or it's not tasty. I would have like every single shade of adjective in between there.
That's it. What that's
What do
all
you
you need.
need?
That's all you need.
Yeah. So, it is really starting to feel like autumn up here in Connecticut.
And what do you have to drink?
Oh,
Speaking of,
well, going along with my beautiful autumn theme, I have some Angry Orchard hard cider. And I like hard cider, but I don't usually keep it around. And I had it around because my dear friend Jim loves hard cider and was visiting and came over yesterday. We had our little apple picking trip. It was fabulous. And then we had some dinner. And, of course, last year, I mean, I didn't really go anywhere with any groups of people. But I hadn't been like apple picking or to like a farm or anything for a while. And it was such a little, lovely little pleasure to be able to go out there and do something like that. And I just feel so much more comfortable. What a blessing to, for things to be, as good as they are. Certainly,
Amen.
we're all still having a bit of a hard time in the world with COVID, but
You didn't come across any snakes, did you?
no, Chris, he made me afraid. He's like, watch out for like snakes among the apple. I was like, what? Like, there are no snakes. But then I
No.
got this like Adam and Eve like vision for a moment. I was like, oh no,
Last time I went apple picking, there was a snake,
no,
uh, and he
no, no, no.
literally came like up my pants leg.
You are lying.
I was
No,
walking along, and it was like,
no,
"What is it? My something's itchy on my leg." And
no,
yes,
no.
and
This is a true
my wife
story.
and my daughter behind me, they're laughing their heads off. It's like
No, no, they're laughing
yeah, it was like just a little garter snake kind of a thing.
in your pants, like going up your pants.
Yeah,
Okay, well, better you than me, Chris. I would have freaked out. I would have died. Oh God. I'm really such a baby with like literally all of that stuff. I mean, even little garter snakes we have around here. I mean, if it's like very far away from me, I can watch it like
yeah.
slither away. But if it's coming
No,
near
they're
me,
cute.
it's touching me.
They're
Ooh.
cute. Listen,
They're
it's
kind of
it's
cute.
8:01, and I didn't tell you this, but I have a little special thing here. Ready?
What? Oh my God.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, I'm gonna
Happy
cry,
birthday to
Chris.
you.
Oh,
Birthday, dear Katie Schneider, the
oh.
Schneiderator. Happy birthday to you.
That is so sweet. Oh,
All right, it's a
I
few
do have
days
a tear
early,
in my
but come
eye.
on.
Oh, that is the sweetest thing in the world. I do have a tear in my eye. Thank you so
Oh,
much,
well, happy
Chris.
birthday. Happy birthday. Isn't it? It's not quite your birthday, but
Thank
almost.
Well, you are a precious and dear friend. How wonderful of you.
All right.
Oh, Chris, I'm going to watch that over again on my birthday. My birthday's on Wednesday, October 13th. Thank you so much. That is so sweet. That made me so happy.
Okay.
Well, it is 8 o'clock also. So we do need to give our official welcome um, to FUMFA 69. Oh my God. Can you believe we've had 69 shows since the beginning of quarantine?
No, I can't.
It's amazing. And
It
we
is.
have with us tonight Heather Frimmer and Morrow Dowdle. We are so excited to hear from them tonight. And oh, Chris, that was so, so, so sweet. We have some more friends who have joined us in the chat. Chris Abate, hey, our guest from last
Days
week.
here. We were just
Very
talking about you. Your ears were probably burning.
gushing about how wonderful your poetry is and how great your stories are. Fabulous.
There are sleepers
And
here from California.
Sarah Sleeper, welcome, welcome. And
And
mom
of
and
course,
dad.
Mom and
Mom
Dad.
and dad are,
Of
are
course, Mom.
tuning in.
We-
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Chris, for that beautiful birthday song. That
Oh,
made me
well,
so happy.
you're very welcome.
But also, Chris, can you tell us what we have coming up before we welcome our first reader of the evening?
Yeah. Well, listen, next week we have the fall open mic. And as mentioned, we have Phil Curtis and Chance Acevedo, who are going to be our featured readers that night. But then we also have just a boatload of other readers. And we have Sarah Sleeper. We got a bunch of people whose names I can't even remember because there's so many. But it's Vale and Ed Unmesh, all the way from India, will be joining us. Terry Kemlin, Susan M. Davis from California, and so that's going to happen next week. And the week after that, we got Ray Jane and
Woo!
Owen Elphick. The week after that, Spooky Night. That will be Halloween night, and costumes are encouraged. And some of the same people, as well as Phil Lemos, will be on there. Vale again. Ed Poetastic, Unmesh, all the way from India. I don't know if they have a Halloween thing over in India. Deb Carr will join us. And then we're going to have a time change, just to throw it out there.
Oh, yeah, in the beginning of November.
When we change our clocks, you will be moving your FUMFA Poets and Writers Live clock back as well. We're going to start at 7 instead of 8. We'll remind you as we get closer.
We will. We promise. We will remind you. So when you change the clocks, you're changing your FUMFA tune-in time to 7. All right. Well, we need to welcome up Morrow Dowdle. All right, let me get her banner up here. Welcome, Morrow.
Hi, guys.
How
From
are
North
you this
Carolina.
evening?
That's 2 weeks in a row. North Carolina in the house.
Yes.
I know. And I'll easily say that it was me gushing with you all about my friend Chris, who I'm so happy is here tonight, an amazing poet. Um,
Totally.
yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted. I feel like between having my son 2 years ago and then the pandemic coming on the heels of that, I haven't gotten to read as much as I would
Oh,
like to. So this is such a pleasure. Um,
well, that's perfect. We're thrilled to have you, Morrow. Let me introduce you with your bio.
Yep.
And so happy, to have this opportunity with you. Morrow Dowdle is a poet living in Hillsborough, North Carolina. She released her first chapbook, Nature versus Nurture, in 2018. She has published poetry in numerous journals and anthologies and has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. She is the poetry editor for Sunspot Literary Journal and a member of the Living Poetry Collective of the North Carolina Triangle area. In addition to writing, she practices integrative medicine as a physician assistant in mental health care. Awesome. Welcome, Morrow. We will leave it to
you.
you.
Awesome. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't start with one of my poems about the pandemic. Anthem. Then it cries out, brave and shameless, an electric guitar pealing from an unseen backyard. Some impatient soul cannot wait for when outdoor concerts are legal again. So they donate an earful to sequestered neighbors. There should be a buzz of voices, a swelling cheer. Instead, silence wraps around each glowing note. As strange as if an angel with the face of Hendrix has parted the clouds, descending with an instrument strung with the unraveled strands of our aching lives. The notes come in jagged succession, making no coherent song. Trying to find its way, it doesn't need to be perfect. To mean something, it breaks the silence. It reminds someone that they are not alone. Oh, angel, I wish you 1,000 screaming girls throwing panties at your stage. I wish you 1,000 arms lifted, flaming lighters held aloft. It's only death. In this house, they're not afraid of death. When they visit a new city, they always make time for graveyards. The child loves the littlest tombstones with their reliefs of lambs and putti, the similarly diminutive bodies below of no concern. Skeletons are just friends who have lost their skin, their sentience. The parents never hide what happens if you fall out of the apartment window or open the car door driving 65 miles an hour down a highway. They don't pretend that the split open doe on the side of the road is sleeping, or that the vulture nuzzling her intestines is doing other than what it is. They don't declare that cancer will be cured or that guns don't kill people. They don't believe that death needs a reason. They don't bluster that someone is in a better place when their life was going just fine, nor do they grieve when death is much needed relief. They don't discuss passing away. They say dead and gone and in the mud. They always kiss goodnight and goodbye. The end hangs around some unknown corner, making of life a rich batter into which they swirl their fingers. They don't tell stories of after, adequate that atoms commingle with what feeds nematodes and tender roots. If there is something, it would be merely icing. So I've tried to give you all a mix of some older and newer work. There's nothing in here from before, I think, 2009. Um, I wrote very intensively around the time that I first started my career as a physician assistant, through the first few years of that. And then I took a little bit of a break once I had my daughter, but um, I was lucky enough to join the Living Poetry Collective of the Triangle, and that was kind of what got me going all over again. It's been an incredibly supportive community. So a good number of these are ones that my friends, some of whom I know are here tonight, have helped me workshop. After midnight, our mothers proclaimed that nothing good ever happens after midnight, as if having us in bed by the time the 2 clock hands clasped at the top of the dial would rescue us from sex and mind-altering substances. Our mothers wanted to save us from what didn't kill them, deprive us of what they whispered and winked about with old college friends, over too many glasses of wine. They told us fairy tales where midnight was the realm of ghosts and demons, the hour when princesses turned into ordinary girls. Despite their best efforts, we would learn for ourselves how darkness can be expansive and allowant, making possible what daylight only imagined. We skinny dipped in the ocean after beach patrol abandoned their post, our bodies transient and harmless as the stars. We danced until we spilled out of the club, filling diners with our spikes and vinyl. We drank until the bar closed, then took the party to someone's apartment. We emptied bottles and filled ashtrays, turned our friends into lovers, conversation into revelation. We watched the moon slip across the sky like a strap loosed from its shoulder, without further thought. After midnight was where we learned what our mothers knew, but never could have taught. Lazarus love. It's been cinched tightly in a sack with a clutch of rocks, shaken, dropped into a deep lake, then surged back to the surface, bruised and spluttering. And how does it do it? It's a Lazarus love that's died over and over, yet keeps crawling back from under the mound of dirt. Exposed bone here, missing eye there, skin sloughing like old paint, stumbling back to the village to reinstate its residents. And why does it do it? Rising even as onlookers gasp and shut their eyes, shake their heads, or attack it in anger. It surpasses expectation, impervious to both the mediocre and zealous. It holds us not as fetters, but as a ground we walk on, two paths that cannot diverge upon a wider highway, surviving not by or against, but beyond our will. The one element stronger than anything molecular bonds can contrive. So, like a number of people, I tried my hand at a little gardening when the pandemic came around, but I should have known better. I don't have a knack for it. Know a lot of poets who love to garden, and it's just not me, not at this point in my life. However, I will say that 2 of our plants, my daughter and I planted a garden, and 2 plants survived. An amazing jalapeno that just kicked all the other plants' butts, and a pretty awesome zucchini that made at least one as pretty much as big as a newborn baby. Black thumb. My fingers poison to soil. Any attempt to garden quickly withers. I think I care for the little green that comes my way, to water when necessary, provide the right balance of sun or shade. But I lack intuition or attention to what lacks evident sentience, cannot express distress until deterioration too advanced to bring it back. Better tossed in compost, hope for future growth. I am much better at discerning the unneeded, pulling out, unwanted sprouts, eradicating whole roots, preventing their return. What can be said of a person who prefers pruning over nurture? There is one bit of life I have cultivated well. She's sleeping at last after rising to relay anxieties that I deftly weed out. I hardly know how I did it. Maybe when the gardener is ready, the right fruit presents. My friends and workshop companions who know me know that I like to write about a huge variety of subjects. There's pretty much nothing that eludes my interest. And in fact, as time goes on, I find that I'm much less interested in myself and more interested in things going on around me, whether it's, something that strikes me that's gone on locally or broader socio-political issues. Missy. Skeleton in a storage unit, finally identified 5 years after its discovery. A woman missing from a reservation over a decade and a half. The radio segment not even a minute long, not even a name spoken. Ashamed to the length of her journey from North Carolina, from North Dakota to North Carolina, from known to unknown, from fully fleshed to a collection of bones, anonymity broken only by DNA. Woman of the First Nations, heiress to the country she traveled across. Ikwe, Anishinaabe, why did you leave the Turtle Mountain Band for the streets of Durham? Who stripped your vitality? Who put you in that plastic box? Made you morbid memorabilia? What cursed elixir did you drink? What losing card did you pull? What led you from bad to worse? Your bones are now at rest in the soil of your ancestors, but are they at peace? The ride. It's a space only she could inhabit, the slender distance between my body and the back of the dining room chair. It's a space only she would think to enter, this only body who has lived inside me, climbing into this narrow gap, so close that she has to wrap her arms around my belly, her legs around my hips to fit. We could be sitting on a motorcycle, faces hopeful in the chrome, driving out for the first time, testing life as parent and child, tranquil in this seat as wind whistles through our hair. She has no idea what I'm packing in these saddlebags, no conception yet of a 3-generation hiatus on love between mothers and daughters, and how far we're going to ride to end it. So I'm sure you can tell by now that my 2 children who I've had in the past 5 years definitely have become an important topic in my poetry. I try not to overdo it. It can become a bit sentimental if you don't watch yourself, but they're pretty inspiring little kids. Here's another one that I wrote in the early days of the pandemic. Lungs. 2 cushions upon which breath lays its sweet head. 2 wings flapping their way into our continued existence. Bellows of the body's hearth where other organs kneel. Trees of life, branching bronchi and bronchiole, terminating in alveoli, clustered fruit exchanging vital gases. We trust in their rhythm, assume they will persist like the moon-tugged tide, protectors by cough and spasm, propelling out what should never have entered. They work so well without our intervention, until they don't. Magic apparatus, we presume their perfection, and there the virus invades, raking its fingers into those intimate passages, scarring tissues, restricting respiration, sometimes so much that a machine is needed to breathe, and sometimes even the machine is not enough. I definitely end up bringing medical stuff into my medical topics into my poetry at times. I write a lot about my patients as well. It's difficult at times because I want to be very careful not to be exploitative or insensitive, and obviously to keep people's anonymity. I didn't put any of my patient poems in here tonight. But yeah, it is something that's certainly on my mind and is a huge inspiration to my writing. Nice. I've spent an awful lot of time trying not to be nice at all. I've been the combat boots at the debutante ball, the new tattoo at Christmas dinner, the sore loser and ungrateful winner, the dance to Santana on top of a bar, the blatant makeout across the hood of a car, the notch on the bedpost and the walk of shame, the deliberate misplacement of praise and blame, the silent treatment and the cold shoulder, the refusal to act my age as I got older, The secret breached and illicit ears reached. The beloved friend never heard from again. But now, this child makes me reconsider when she proclaims in her delicious Twitter, "Mommy is a nice lady." I wonder if she sees something I've been missing, something beyond chaste kissing, sweater sets, and sensible shoes, the right religion or attitudes, being part of the desirable clique, the smile when you feel like shit, the perfect daughter, the straight and narrow. I should recoil when she calls me nice. Instead, ecstasy, nirvana, and paradise. Cricket. Somewhere inside the man still exists the baby who made chirping sounds. Strange even then, springing into existence on long, spindly limbs, named for the nocturnal creature who portends rain, wealth, or death, depending on the legend, who highlights silence when an assembly makes no noise. He is the quiet that cries out at the foot of this family, the repository for lost optimism, misplaced expectation, the soul that defies society or even definition, unsought, unknown. To see him requires looking not at, but past. To find him requires fleeing rooms of degradation, achieving the center of his refuge, a wondrous space filled with drawings, diagrams detailed by a precise hand, shadow architecture of his mind, inroad to his heart. Visions beyond what the world offers and now never will. Like all insects who find their way inside a human home, let us welcome him, resist the urge to crush or put him out. Let us hear in his rough song a symphony of grace. Let us meet him in his corner, and like all beings that make themselves difficult to love, let us love him all the more for it. The mirror trick flips his reflection just out of step with its corporeal form. In its merciless plane, I see for the first time my father in my son, swirling about the set of eyes, the pout of mouth. We tried to escape him. We deemed him dead and gone. But he is still here in all of us who carry his blood. I want to embrace in this baby what was my father before he became a man. I want to break in this baby whatever of him could become my father. Remember, there is something in us that makes a person shape their pain into a weapon. And if there is something worthy in us, so there was once in him, if only as a seed that never sprouted, if only as in an infantile dream. So, like many poets, I experienced some trauma during childhood. So, starting out, it was a big topic for me. I thought my pain and my suffering was so special and unique that I just had to write about it all the time. And, it was very cathartic at the time. But as time goes on, the less and less that I find myself um, writing about those days and that subject, but it still certainly creeps in at times. Deer swim. A buck bounds through the backyard, pursued by a neighborhood dog. The deer rushes past the cul-de-sac where there are no woods, only water. I run outside for the outcome, half imagining I can help it escape. Arriving at the moment the deer, its mad dash unhalting, leaps straight and swims out toward the middle of the lake. The dog does not follow, as shocked as I at the nautical launch. It slinks off in the wake of its failed attack. The deer continues its course, ignoring the shoreline, submerged to the neck, bobbing antlered head, stalwart as it diminishes. The day before, my mother and I sit in a therapist's office, decide after 13 years of silence to salvage what we can from sunken wreckage. The day after, I take a pregnancy test, the water of my body hormonal enough to create a perpendicular line across the solo horizontal mark. The negative turned positive, beliefs turned from solid to liquid. I am getting my mother back. I am becoming a mother again. I am learning that deer can swim. Waiting room. Having departed from understood, but not quite arrived at unknown, it's where she sits, touching the edge. Since the moment the scan showed what might have otherwise, for a time, gone unnoticed. How can you trust a body that has gone so wrong? What is strength when it shrouds what we need to know? If only she had sensed the lonesome one before it propagated across the landscape of viscera. She could have sent a single soldier. Now it will take whole armies, old colonels, conscripted youth, uncertain mercenaries. She will have to accept what she is given. She will have to ask for things she never wanted to ask for. She will have to love the body, though it betrayed her, betrays her still. She will have to be present for others, even as her own essence abandons her. She will learn to be honest when she wants to lie, and to lie when she wants to scream. Where she sits, it's not so different from the one silent in basement or attic, as Nazis stalked above or below, from the one lying gagged and bound in the trunk of a moving car, from the one clinging to a roof while waters rise. They have all touched the edge of what is possible, of what is inevitable. All that's left is to wait. One of my favorite things that happens to me from time to time when I'm reading poetry is that I get really inspired to write a poem. Sometimes it might be similar to the poet I'm reading. Sometimes it is totally disparate, but inspired nonetheless. To the Future, for W.S. Merwin. May I meet you cloaked in both exuberance and caution. May I welcome you unrolling smoothly or spinning out like a skein in a toddler's hands. May you cover me like another square added to a quilt, or render me bare, unraveling by one thread caught on the past. May I not fear sickness, solitude, and destitution by sudden strike or insidious rot. May I not dread infidelity by ex-girlfriend or young admirer. May I forgive myself for how my children ripen or what they fail to achieve. May I avoid roadside psychics, palm readers, and those who parse you from the bottom of a cup. May I evade ensnarement by imagination, building you from loose neuronal charge, collapsing with each of reality's arrivals. May I strive less to lead or follow and more to walk alongside. May I long for you and hold you lightly, making plans, knowing you may never arrive. But if you do, may you come by the one prayer, thy will be done. And my last poem is one that I often like to end to. This one is back from 2012, but it's still one of my favorites. It makes me smile still whenever I read it, and I'm still pretty happy with it. The Carrot. While pruning her garden, a woman pulls forth a young carrot. Deeming it rather puny, she prepares to discard it when she notices something encircling just below the sprouting greens. Her daughter hears an almighty scream and rushes to the uproar's source. The mother has found her wedding ring, a slim gold band inlaid with diamonds that went missing 16 years back while working in the kitchen, and has now been discovered on the tapered finger of this root. As I look at the article picture of the smiling woman and her husband, the ring clasped joyfully between them, I wonder what became of the carrot, thought inadequate for stew or salad before it manifested its treasure. After its brief stint in the spotlight, did it provide gustatory pleasure to the ring owner and her family, become feed for the sheep? Or was it swiftly buried in the same compost that once nourished its own heroic seed? I thank the carrot and every humble messenger who, without expectation of recompense, returns to us from the humus of our lives, beloved things that we have knowingly or accidentally cast aside. Thank you.
Woo! Oh, Morrow, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous poems, powerful and beautiful, and just like very, very lyrical and very touching and very personal. I just absolutely loved them. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right. I noticed you talked about how you don't tend to write poems about yourself so much, and yet every poem in there was like a portal into you, even if it was about somebody else, something else. So super personal, right? It's beautiful.
These beautiful perceptions that we got to sort of see through your eyes and the way that you shaped it. I feel like there are so many images in my mind with just laden with meaning. Thank you so much. Just love listening to your poems.
Oh, thank you so much.
Right, and everybody, get your questions ready.
Yes.
Tomorrow, later in our broadcast, we will have our Q&A.
Yes.
So,
all right. So we will bring back Morrow for the Q&A. Thank you so much. We will see you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And now it's time to bring up Heather Frimmer. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I really enjoyed those poems as well.
That was nice,
gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
And Chris, how do you know Heather?
Oh, well, Heather happens to have been in my writing workshop
for many years.
For
6 or 7 years.
Maybe more years than either one of us like to contemplate. But yeah, she is one of my star workshoppers whose second novel was just recently published.
Yeah. September 21st. Yes.
Get a load of this. I mean, it's a very cool cover. We've talked about this cover, Heather and I, but it's I mean, I love that font, and then the design of it.
Gorgeous.
So interesting, because it's about, well, you'll see, but it's about there's a brain surgeon is one of the main characters, and if you look, it's kind of brain-like, right?
I just noticed that as soon as you were about to say that.
It's subtle, right? Because it just looks kind of like a cool design, but then you keep, I just kept looking at it saying, what? And it's a brain.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Took me a little while, but I figured it out. Because my brain's it's a little slow on the uptake. But anyway, I'm going to read your bio, Heather.
Great.
Heather Frimmer is a radiologist specializing in breast and emergency room imaging. Her first novel, Bedside Manners, which you should all go out there and buy, was published in 2018 and has received several awards, including National Indie Excellence, Reader's Favorite, and Independent Press Awards. She completed her medical training at Weill Cornell Medical College, New York Presbyterian Cornell, and Yale New Haven Hospital. These are not
amazing
rinky-dink hospitals, people. Like the real thing. She lives with her husband and 2 beautiful children in suburban Connecticut. Her second novel, Better to Trust, which I just showed you, was just released last month. So everybody, please welcome Heather Frimmer. Have fun, Heather. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you. All right, thanks. I'm so happy to be here. So I'm going to be reading the first 2 chapters of Better to Trust. Chapter 1, Allison, June 3rd, 2019. Allison leaned her body weight on the walker, using all her strength to slide the damn thing forward with her left hand. Grunting with the effort, she advanced her left leg and dragged the dead weight of her right leg behind her. Good job, Svetlana pointed down the long corridor. Soon we'll make it to the end. Allison found it odd that Svetlana used the word we all the time. She was trying to make it seem like they were in this thing together, on the same team working toward a common goal. But she wasn't the invalid. Allison was. She stopped to breathe. The end of the hallway was only a few hundred feet away, but it seemed like miles. Every step a slow torture. She'd made some progress since she'd transferred to Spaulding Rehab Center from the hospital 2 weeks ago, if dragging herself from her room to the next could be considered progress. Let's go. Svetlana slid the walker forward. We can do this. We're not done yet for today. Okay, Allison managed. She was a woman of few words these days. Her thoughts flowed fine, but the connection between her brain and her mouth was tenuous. She'd never even heard of aphasia before this whole thing happened. When she first heard the word, she'd pictured ambrosia, that sickeningly sweet fruit salad Great Aunt Frida used to bring to family functions. But the more she learned about aphasia, the more it became clear that the similarity ended with the sound of the words. Aphasia was not pink or fluffy or sweet. I'm really proud of you. We've been putting in the effort and it shows, Svetlana said, as if doing 2 hours of physical therapy a day had been Allison's choice. There was a time when doing a 2-hour workout at the gym was one of her greatest joys, when running a faster mile or setting a new personal bench press record gave her a sense of accomplishment, the natural high lingering long after she arrived home. Now she dreaded these therapy sessions, knowing the effort it would take to move just a few feet. All right, Allison stammered. She would like to tell Svetlana that some days she'd rather give up before they'd even started, but this was the best she could do. Since learning about her condition, she'd become a self-made expert on aphasia. Trapped with her thoughts, she spent hours on her iPad reading books and research papers, personal memoirs from people who'd had strokes or bleeds or tumors and lived to tell their stories, articles from speech and occupational therapists about how to rehabilitate after these devastating events. The YouTube videos of patients with aphasia were horrible to watch, but she couldn't make herself look away. She felt thankful she didn't have the fluent type of aphasia. Those unfortunate souls spouted endless streams of gibberish. They seemed to know exactly what they wanted to say, but the words changed on the trip from their brains to their mouths, the train tracks crisscrossing over each other so that the messages came out mangled and unintelligible. The rails in Allison's brain, on the other hand, were straight but severely damaged. Occasionally, a train finished the journey. Okay and all right had the greatest chance of reaching their destination, but many of them crashed and burned. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make the words come out. I have an idea, Svetlana said, stopping at a row of chairs along the wall. We are going to learn how to stand up from a chair. Now? Allison wondered why Svetlana introduced new challenges near the end of their sessions when Allison already felt depleted. Svetlana helped Allison maneuver the walker in front of a chair and motioned for her to take a seat. Yes, now. This skill will come in handy, especially when you get home. Allison collapsed into the chair and exhaled, grateful for the brief respite. She considered telling Svetlana she wasn't up for any new tricks right now, but she knew the woman wouldn't take no for an answer. When Grant had said Svetlana was the best physical therapist in town, he must have known she would be a good fit. Tough, aggressive, and no nonsense. No wasn't in her vocabulary. Svetlana lined the walker up in front of Allison and took a seat next to her. Okay, we're going to lean forward, hold onto the walker, and bend your knees, she said, demonstrating the posture. Allison tried to maneuver her body into that position, but it didn't feel right. Before her surgery, her body had always done exactly what she'd asked, but now, even the simplest things were a struggle. Lean more and bend deeper. Svetlana adjusted Allison's arms and legs with her hands. Now, we're going to put weight on the walker and press up through the bottom of our feet. Though Allison could picture what Svetlana described, making her body follow suit was another story. She leaned forward and pressed as hard as she could through her left arm and the bottom of her feet, trying to engage her quads. Her legs burned and fought against her. She gave one last push and suddenly she was almost there. When she was nearly standing, Allison began teetering to the left. Instead of keeping her eyes up, as Svetlana always instructed, she looked down at the floor, trying to regain her balance. Amazing job, Svetlana said, taking hold of Allison's left arm and guiding her back to the chair. Fell, Allison managed. You didn't fall, Svetlana held out her hand for a fist bump. You stood up. It's not going to be perfect the first time. We'll work more on this tomorrow. As Allison's hands met Svetlana's, she felt relieved that the session was almost over, but also proud of her determination and accomplishment. She'd harnessed the power within her and almost stood without help, something she'd never thought possible. It had taken all the effort she could muster, but she'd put her mind to it and done the work. The floor clerk stopped next to them. Mrs. Jacobs has a visitor, she said. She's not supposed to have guests during therapy, Svetlana said. Allison wondered who it could be. Her husband, Michael, always visited right after work, so he wasn't due for at least half an hour. She said it's important. Svetlana helped Allison up and guided the walker into a turn. Okay, give us a few minutes. With lots of lifting and shimmying, Svetlana settled Allison back into bed. She propped Allison's right leg onto a pillow and raised the back of the bed to a comfortable angle. After Svetlana left, Allison heard Cynthia's voice in the hall, making small talk with the clerk about the recent summer heat wave. Leave it to her sister to talk to anyone. The cashier at Whole Foods, her massage therapist, the exterminator, anyone willing to lavish her with attention. Allison wondered why Cynthia was here today. She hadn't bothered visiting since well before Allison was transferred here. Hello! Cynthia came in and planted a kiss on Allison's cheek. It's so good to see you. She looked like she'd been crying, her eyelids pink and puffy, probably overreacting to something or other. Classic Cynthia, Allison thought. Allison was the one in rehab, not Cynthia. Grant had operated on Allison's brain, not Cynthia's, so if anyone had a reason to cry, it was her, not her histrionic sister. Been a while, Allison managed. I know, Cynthia took a seat. We've had a lot going on at home, trying to get everything sorted out. There's been so much going on, I don't even know where to start. Where, Sadie? I left her home to do homework. Maybe she'll come next time. No. Allison would have loved to see her 15-year-old niece, but that wasn't what she'd been trying to ask. She was wondering why Grant hadn't come today. It was a Monday, so he must be at work, but he'd been coming with Cynthia whenever he could. We've had some changes in the family that I want to fill you in on. I'd rather you hear it from me than finding out some other way. Cynthia's voice sounded shaky. I know it sounds vague, but I promise I'll tell you everything. I'm just not sure the best way to say it without making you upset. All this talking in circles meant Cynthia was hiding something. Maybe her news would explain why Grant hadn't come with her. Could he be sick? So many of their friends had received unexpected diagnoses, cancer, multiple sclerosis, heart disease, but Grant seemed so strong, somehow above the fray. Allison prayed that Sadie was all right. She couldn't bear it if something bad was going on with her. Okay, Cynthia continued, I should just tell you. We're always honest with each other. I don't know why this is so hard for me. What? Allison widened her eyes, trying to tell Cynthia to come out with it already. She could handle whatever her sister had to say. There was an article. Cynthia took a deep breath. In the Newton Reporter. It's about Grant. An article about Grant didn't seem like earth-shattering news. He was always being written up for something or other related to his job, but the look on Cynthia's face told Allison this article was different. I didn't know anything was wrong, Cynthia went on. I thought he had everything under control. Allison had no idea what Cynthia was talking about, but she could tell by the pitch of her voice and the terrified look on her face that whatever was going on was a big deal. I can't imagine what this could do to his career. Cynthia covered her face with her hands. What? Allison had no clue what was going on. Please, Allison, I need this to stay between us, Cynthia pleaded. For the sake of Grant's career, I need you to lay low. Allison's husband, Michael, entered the room holding a newspaper. Allison, you have to see this, he said, stopping short when he noticed Cynthia at the bedside. What is this all about? Michael asked, holding the paper in the air. Did Grant do something wrong? Cynthia stood up. I can explain. It isn't how it looks. He's a good surgeon. Does this have anything to do with what happened to Allison? Michael waved the newspaper at Cynthia. Allison wished he would hand it to her so she could figure out what they were talking about. She needed to see the article for herself. Cynthia sat down and started sobbing. I feel like our family is falling apart. Michael slapped the newspaper onto the bed. I don't understand what you're saying. Is there more you're not telling us? Allison had never seen him so worked up before. She picked up the paper with her left hand and scanned the headlines on the front page, one of them jumping out at her. She read the first few sentences. Local neurosurgeon slammed with lawsuit by Julia Barker. Renowned neurosurgeon Grant Kaplan, 44 of Newton, was formally served with a lawsuit on January 23rd of this year. The plaintiff, Jeffrey Stone, 35 of nearby Lincoln, has completely lost hearing in his left ear since he underwent surgery last year for an acoustic neuroma, a benign brain tumor. The two parties are currently in the discovery phase of the case. It's all too much, Cynthia sobbed. I don't know what to say, how to make things right. Allison's stomach clenched. She didn't know the full story, but she could tell this was no run-of-the-mill legal suit. There was something Cynthia wasn't sharing, and she couldn't help wondering if it had to do with her surgery. I hate to say it, but something seems rotten in Denmark, Michael said. Cynthia wailed and tried to approach Michael for a hug. I think we need some time. Michael stepped back. I suggest you leave us alone. Chapter 2, Grant, February 5th, 2019, 4 months earlier. Grant fastened the titanium covers over the 3 burr holes he had drilled in the skull and pulled the scalp flap back into place. The patient had tripped on the curb while walking his dog, landing headfirst on the cement. He relished the sound of the pneumatic drill as it tunneled through the bone, the sharp pop as the scalpel pierced the dura, and the familiar smell of bone dust in the air, the brain slowly returning to its rightful place against the inner table of the skull. These patients usually awoke from anesthesia feeling much more themselves. Their neurologic exams noticeably improved, and their families appreciative of his skill and talent. It was a mindless procedure, but it was nice to have a quick win once in a while. Most of his surgeries, aneurysm clippings and AVM resections, were much more complicated and lasted several hours. It often took days or even weeks to see any improvements if the patients were so lucky. Even though he was one of the nation's experts on the treatment of vascular malformations, he had to psych himself up before scrubbing in for those cases. As Grant finished stapling the scalp flap back together, he noticed the incision looked swollen, like something was pushing up from underneath. Damn it. With today's packed schedule, he couldn't afford to waste any time. He quickly removed the staples, hoping the nurses wouldn't notice the speed bump. Draining the small collection of blood with a suction catheter, he hummed along with a Charlie Parker saxophone riff coming through the speakers to assure the staff everything was on track. When the bleeder stopped, Grant replaced the staple line and returned the stapler to the instrument tray. One down, how many more to go? He looked over at Wendy, his favorite surgical nurse and right-hand woman. With her bleached blonde hair and prominent crow's feet from her 2-pack-a-day smoking habit, her look was less than classy, but no one kept an OR running like she did. Though she was nearing retirement, Grant hoped Wendy would stick around for at least a few more years. He had no patience for anything less than exemplary competence and efficiency. In fact, he had filed with the OR director a list of staff members he found acceptable, and only those on the list were allowed to step foot inside his sacred temple. Wendy checked her schedule. Craniectomy for a massive MCA stroke. We'll be ready to go within a half hour, Dr. Kaplan. He pulled off his surgical gown and gloves. Let's keep moving. I can't afford any delays today. Grant stepped out for a breather, and Vikram Chawla, his preferred anesthesiologist, followed behind. They had trained together during their residencies, and they'd both stayed on when they graduated. Over time, they'd come to learn each other's habits and eccentricities. Grant didn't need to explain to Vic how he wanted his patients anesthetized, and Vic knew Grant wouldn't tolerate small talk or unnecessary chatter. No blathering about headlines or baseball scores during his operations. In the hallway, Vic grabbed a paper cup from the top of the water cooler. How about a drink? With the way my schedule looks today, I could use something stronger, Grant said. I swear Wendy's trying to kill me. Vic filled his cup. It's her job. Keep the OR humming. The quicker the turnover, the better for the bottom line. I wouldn't have it any other way, you know that. Sometimes it might be nice to have a few minutes to decompress. Vic walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Charles River. Maybe take a walk outside. Grant stepped up to the window and looked down at the trees along the river, the bare branches coated with ice. No sunlight for us. Going anywhere for February break, Vic asked. Not this year, Grant said. Too many surgeries. Mira booked a trip to some resort in Mexico. I told her as long as there's no boats. Not even the kind where you can see the fish through the bottom, Grant said. The twins would love it. No way. Just thinking about that makes me nauseous. Puking over the railing isn't my idea of a vacation. Remember the time you lost your lunch on the booze cruise before you even had a drink? Grant asked. The memory is burned in my brain forever. Grant pulled his claret bottle out of his pocket and slid one into his mouth. He didn't normally need it midday, but with today's lineup, he'd make an exception. Some days he needed a little extra push to reach the finish line. Allergies still bothering you? Vic eyed the bottle. In February? Grant nodded and put it back in his pocket. Maybe you should take the family somewhere too, Vic said. It's good to take a breather from this place once in a while. I don't know if I can spend that much time with Sadie. Her teen drama is over the top these days. That bad? Vic asked. She's a bit Jekyll and Hyde, Grant said. One minute she's my sweet little girl, and the next she's the devil incarnate. I'm not looking forward to the teenage years. Vic tossed his cup into the garbage can next to the water cooler. The twins want to be with me all the time. It's exhausting, but not bad for the old ego. Enjoy it while it lasts, Grant said. Sadie spends every minute with her friends. How's high school going? Not sure, Grant said. She doesn't really share much. When we ask her what she did in school, she always says, nothing. This is when the kids start to experiment with things. Like what? Smoking, sex, smack, Vic chuckled. So many selections available to teenagers these days. Sadie would never do anything like that, Grant said. Just make sure you keep an eye on her. Vic flipped through a magazine someone had left on the window ledge. Seriously? You made the list again? What? Vic held up the copy of Boston Magazine and pointed to the page. It's getting a little ridiculous. Grant shrugged. I can't help being the best. They don't even have a section for anesthesiologists. It's like we're not even doctors. But you still pull in the big bucks. Good point, Vic said. I may not get the accolades, but I'll be able to pay for college. Wendy poked her head into the hall. Doctors, the next case is teed up. Before going back into the OR, Grant's cell phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, saw Michael's name, and pressed ignore. His brother-in-law was probably calling to drone on about the Red Sox spring training. Grant was a lifelong fan, but Michael's passion for the team bordered on obsession. Grant would call him back on his way home when he had nothing better to do than listen to monologues about batting averages and stolen base percentages. Wendy, what would I do without you to keep me in line? He called from the sink as he scrubbed up for the next case. You'd be nowhere without me, Dr. Kaplan, she said. Grant slipped his arms into the surgical gown she held open for him and waited for her to tie it around his waist. Okay, team, he said, stepping up to the operating table. Let's crack this one open before it's too late. After he finished the last surgery, Grant went to the locker room. He loved the feel of a hot shower after a long day in the OR, the way the water washed the burnt smell of bone dust from his hair and the dried sweat from his body, leaving him invigorated and ready to face the rest of his day. Despite the scalp bleed as he closed, the subdural drainage had been the highlight of the day. The other patients he'd operated on were pretty much gorked. He never said that derogatory term out loud, but that didn't stop him from thinking it. If those patients regained any neurologic function, it would be nothing short of a miracle. As he rinsed the shampoo from his hair, his recent malpractice case flashed through his mind. Lawsuits weren't uncommon in neurosurgery, but it was still an annoyance he didn't have time for in his busy life. He hoped his lawyer would settle it soon and make it go away. He shut off the water and wrapped a towel around his waist. It always felt so refreshing to put on street clothes after a day in the OR. Sitting down on the bench, he looked at his phone to see he'd missed 3 more calls from Michael, with 2 voicemails, and 2 missed calls from Cynthia. He decided to call Michael back first to find out what could be so important. It had to be something more than baseball. Where have you been? Michael asked. I was scrubbed in. Allison's in the hospital, Wellesley Community. She passed out at school and came in by ambulance. Jesus, what happened? I'm not sure yet. They're still running tests. Did she vasovagal? What the fuck does that mean? Michael said. Sorry. Grant often used medical terms without realizing. She passed out, Michael continued, and it's all so confusing, and we needed you. We need you, I mean. What did the test show? Did they do a CT or MRI? I don't know. It looked like a donut. Okay, and did they give you results? Grant hoped they had done a CTA and an MRI, but he knew it wasn't likely at that podunk hospital. They said she's bleeding into her head, and they're not sure why. I don't know how this happened. She's so healthy. Shit, Grant said. He gathered his keys and wallet and slammed his locker. I'm heading to the garage right now. Is Cynthia with you? Yeah, she's sitting right here. Okay, tell her I'll be there in 25 minutes. As he ran down the stairs and into the hospital garage, Grant thought about what could have caused the bleed. The most common cause of spontaneous intracranial hemorrhage was hypertension, but Allison definitely didn't have high blood pressure. She was a vegetarian and a fitness fanatic, an early adopter of all the newest exercise crazes. Lately, she'd been obsessed with some new surfboard class at her health club. That left more ominous reasons. Tumor or aneurysm or some other congenital vascular malformation, none of which spelled good news. He drove out of the garage, took a few quick turns through the narrow cobblestone streets before speeding onto Sturrow Drive to the Mass Pike. He accelerated and merged into an opening in the left lane, ignoring the honking and raised middle finger of the driver behind him as he considered his next steps. First of all, Allison should be transferred to his hospital as soon as possible. A community hospital was no place for anything more serious than constipation or strep throat. He used the voice recognition in his car to call Calvin Shin, one of his partners at Downtown Neurological Associates, and the one he respected most. Cal was the only other neurosurgeon who consistently made it onto the Boston Magazine list every year. Hello? Hey, Cal, Grant said. I have a bit of a situation. What's up, bud? Cynthia's sister had a spontaneous brain hemorrhage a few hours ago. She's in the ER at Wellesley Community. From what I can tell, the staff is sitting with their thumbs up their asses. Allison? Shit, that sounds like their MO. What can I do? She needs a real workup, Grant said. They haven't even done a CTA yet. We need to get her over to the Mecca, Cal said. My thought exactly, Grant said. Do you think I can transfer her to your service? Whatever you need, bud, Cal said. I can come in tonight and get things going once she arrives. Grant turned the car into the hospital garage and parked in the first open spot. Thanks, Cal. I'll keep you posted. As he hung up, gratitude surged through him. He was so lucky to have friends like Cal and Vic by his side, no matter what. Grant entered the OR and followed a nurse through the automatic doors. If he checked in at the desk in the waiting room, the high school dropout at the window would make him fill out every line of the stick-on name badge, and he needed to get in there as soon as possible. Walking down the ER corridor, he passed an elderly man repeatedly moaning, "Can I get some help over here?" An obese woman whose oxygen mask was sliding off the side of her face, and a teenage boy lying on a gurney in a pair of red underwear. Finally, he saw Allison in one of the last patient rooms, and she waved at him to come in. Doing a quick inventory, he noticed her pink skin and symmetrical smile. He felt relieved to see her looking healthy, alert, and neurologically intact. It must be a small bleed, he thought with relief. Cynthia sat on the chair next to the bed holding Allison's hand. His wife stood up when Grant walked in. What took you so long? Grant could tell by the tone of her voice she was stressed. She'd always been protective of her little sister and was probably feeling out of her element here. He gave Cynthia a quick peck on the cheek before leaning down to hug Allison. I came as fast as I could, he said. Where's Michael? He went to grab something for us to eat, Cynthia said. I think he couldn't stand all the waiting. How are you feeling? He asked Allison. I've been better. It's like my head is being squeezed in a vice. You passed out at school? Yeah, I don't really know what happened. 1 minute I was fine, and the next thing I knew, I woke up in an ambulance. It sounds like you were out pretty good. Were you doing anything strenuous when you passed out? Exercising or something? No, Allison said quickly, nothing out of the ordinary. Has the doctor been in to talk to you yet? We saw a PA, Cynthia said, but we're waiting for the neurosurgeon to see her. They probably don't have someone in-house. Did the PA say what the scan showed? She said I have a bleed in my brain, Allison said, that I may need to stay overnight. That's it? How big is the bleed? Did she say anything about mass effect or midline shift? Grant, quit it with the doctor speak, Cynthia said. Allison is anxious enough as it is. I'm just trying to gather the necessary. Before he could finish his thought, a doctor in a white coat strode into the room. Grant knew right away by his straight posture and confident gait that this had to be the neurosurgeon. No weak egos in my specialty, he thought. The man walked past him and stopped at the side of the stretcher with his back to Grant. I'm the neurosurgeon on call, he said to Allison. I understand you passed out at work? Yes, Allison said. I don't remember much. He asked Allison to squeeze his fingers with both hands and then instructed her to lift her legs off the table while he pushed down on them. Grant watched him perform a perfunctory neurologic exam. Are you going to grace us with an introduction? Grant asked. At this point, he didn't care if he sounded rude. This guy wasn't even close to good enough to take care of Allison. He had to figure out a way to get her out of here, and quick. I'm Dr. Howie, the doctor said, turning around to shake Grant's hand. Grant recognized the crooked smirk. Seth? Seth Howie had graduated near the bottom of Grant's medical school class at Tufts. He had matched in family medicine and only managed to switch to neurosurgery when a resident at a program somewhere in the Corn Belt had a sudden psychotic break. Grant and his friends used to call him Howie Will He Graduate behind his back. You escaped Kansas, Grant said. Seth smiled. Iowa. I was counting the days. What are you doing here, Grant? Allison is my sister-in-law. So what can you tell me, Seth? Grant wanted to gather all the information so he could ship her out. He didn't want her here to begin with, and the fact that Howie was on the case only increased his sense of urgency. Allison suffered a spontaneous parenchymal hemorrhage in her left frontal lobe of uncertain etiology, Seth said. We're trying to sort out the differential diagnosis. What does that mean? Allison asked. Sorry, Seth said. We need to do a few more tests to figure out why you're bleeding into your brain. Are there any deficits? Grant asked. A little weakness in her right hand, Seth said. Other than that, she's neurologically intact. Mastering the neurologic exam took years of practice, and Grant knew he couldn't trust Seth's results. He itched to do the exam himself, but that would have to wait until Allison was on his own turf. I don't feel so intact, Allison said. I can't even remember what happened, and the whole school must have seen me being carted away. It's all so strange. I'm going to take care of everything, Grant said. Seth, I'm requesting a transfer. Calvin Shinn will be accepting her to his service. This is something we can deal with here, Seth said. There's no need. Need or no need, that's what I want, and you are going to make it happen. Thank you.
Oh my God, Heather, how can we stop?
Right.
I need this book. Wow! We can't stop there. Everybody go get this book. We need to know what happens. Whoa.
Yeah, I just want to read the Kirkus Reviews, right?
Woo!
A thoughtful and multifaceted tale of recuperation and reinvention. Heather Frimmer chronicles this multi-part drama with warmth and a sharp narrative intelligence. Now, Kirkus Review doesn't mess around, man.
They don't mess around.
Those people, they're mean. And listen to that. They must have loved it.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations, Heather. What incredible writing. I know, I mean, I was fascinated and totally captivated. I know my mom's out there watching, and I know she loved that. I know she was a medical transcriptionist for many years.
There you go.
Yeah, everything that you just mentioned is absolutely. Oh yeah, in the comments right now. Lots of clapping. Anyways, Heather, just absolutely incredible, totally fascinating, and we obviously all need to buy the book, and we need to know what happens. And of course, all of our audience members, Chris, you just put it in the chat. Get your writing and/or medical questions ready for our readers tonight. Both of them are medical professionals. I can't wait to get more back up here. Let's get into
Let's
it.
do it.
All right, let me get that banner up here. Oh, Heather, I'm so sorry. I gushed so much. I didn't even let you even speak. Okay, we need another round of applause for Morrow Dowdle and Heather Frimmer. Woo!
Thank you.
Brava,
Thank
brava.
you.
Well, we always notice that we put a lot of thought into our pairings of our readers, but something always emerges as well. And so as I was, posting everything, I was realizing that both of you were medical professionals. And, not only that, but that in both of your writing, there's this incredible lyrical and beautiful and intense people drama as well. And there are so many connections here, Chris, right?
Oh,
Ooh.
absolutely.
This is like the perfect pairing. I love this.
I know it. Well, and it was. We can't really take credit for it. It was kind of accidental, but all the
The initial thought, yeah.
serendipitous pairings that we get. I mean, it's just amazing. And tonight's more obvious than sometimes it is.
Right.
It was not conscious on my part.
It was, we had our wonderful survey, and we knew we wanted both of you to read, and we were just like, how about these two? And then, we realized we end up discovering that it was the perfect thing to do. Anyways, while the audience out there getting your questions up there in the chat, let's get started with our new famous first question, which Chris debuted a few weeks ago. Chris, take it away on that fabulous first question.
Okay, well, the question it was once posed to me by a good friend who was also a writer and not a published writer. Unfortunately, he passed away before any of that could happen. But he was a wonderful writer, and he was very serious about writing. And he turned to me one time and he said, "Chris, has writing changed your life? And how has writing changed your life?" So this is our new question that we're asking people because it made me think about it so much. Morrow, has it changed your life, and how so, if it has?
It's completely changed my life. I mean, I would say it is my life. Truly, like, aside from my family and aside from my family, like, this is my soul. I joke with people that I love being a PA and I love working in mental health, but I joke with people, it really is my day job. Even though, like, the vast minority of time is spent writing, it's still it is the love of my life. It's, reading changed my life first. As a kid, I was kind of lonely. I was a bit of an outsider. I was rather isolated at times, and books were my lifeline, as I know many people can relate. And then I discovered poetry, in a cognizant way when I was maybe 9 or so. Somebody gave me an anthology of poetry that was oriented towards kids, and I resonated with it, and I started writing poetry formally around 10. Of course, most of it was crap, or, like, lightly plagiaristic, but I kept on, and through, like, the misery of being a teenager, it sustained me. And there are 4 quick things that come to mind. Writing helped give me a sense of capability that came completely from within myself, and gave me self-confidence where I had none. It's always been cathartic, like, helping me work through, things that I've been through, or things that, that come to me or trouble me in day-to-day life, whether it's on the macro or micro level, and help me work through it. It's a constant companion for me. Like, wherever I go, there it is. And then it's something that constantly keeps me engaged and challenged. Like, you know,
Yes.
I still consider myself like a very young poet. And, you know, I look forward to like the next several decades of life and just continuing to improve as I go along.
There
Awesome.
you go.
What a fabulous answer, Morrow. Yes.
Great. And, the both of you, as we turn to Heather, I mean, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, Katie, but I would say by far, probably the majority of writers that we've, and now we're getting up to about 175 or 80 writers that we've had on
Individual, unique
this program
writers, yes.
have been, if they have a regular day-to-day job, are teachers.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And here we have
Yeah.
a couple of writers who have whether you consider it just your day job to help you be a writer, but these are like real jobs. These are the real jobs.
Hey,
and,
Chris.
well, I know teaching is a real job, and I do it myself.
Adjacent.
But it's like
very
a lot
writing
of writers
adjacent.
are teachers because you can't make any money writing.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
so it's like, well, what can I do? I can teach. These guys could have a regular life and make a decent living, if not a very good living even, and never write a word. But here they are writing anyway. Heather, how has writing changed you?
I was just before I say that, I was going to say it's relatively rare to find writers who are medical professionals. It's very common to find lawyers who are writers. That's a very common one.
Yes.
But yeah, it is rare, and I don't know why that is. But for me, I started seriously writing in 2014, and I took a writing class sort of on a whim. And the reason I took it was because I felt like the right side of my brain wasn't getting any exercise. Like I love my job, but it's like very like rote in some ways and like the same every day. And there's not a lot of creativity. And so I just needed like some exercise of the creative half of me. And so that's how I started it. And then a lot of what Morrow said really resonates with me too. It really has changed my life in so many ways. One, I just have a whole new community of people, friends and colleagues and other writers that I'm now connected with, whether virtually or in person, bookstagrammers, reviewers, everyone. And that's really just filled out my social life and just made me feel more connected in so many ways. And then also I really enjoy the challenge of writing something new each time, and I give myself my own challenge. Like this book has 2 timelines and 3 perspectives. And so each book, I think I give myself a challenge to try something new, and even though it's still in the same genre, it's got its own differences and individual challenges in each one. So,
medical stories of how many illnesses are there? There's so many.
Yeah, I can keep going forever.
Chris.
Well, I'm just saying it's not like it's not like you're writing about plumbers or something. It's like, well,
well, you never know, Chris. Could be
that could be the next hot genre, plumbing.
But you know what? That would be fascinating. But I think part of the reason, we're so excited to have you, and you're both of your writing is just so excellent. But it's so cool to hear from your world of expertise and also from that perspective, and also to hear of this very different kind of day job, because like the rest of us are teachers, and that makes me think of Chris Abate, who I believe is works with computers, and that also reminds me of Beth Tillman, who is an estate lawyer. Lawyers. But it's just so fascinating how that comes into what you're writing, and it's giving us a real look into this world. And I'm totally living in the world you had us in, Heather, and I need to know what happens. And I love that you said it was just in 2014 that you took your first writing class on a whim, and here you are, 2 books, just absolutely incredible. So awesome.
I mean, I was like Morrow. I was the kid who always had a book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was walking down the street with a book, like, so I'm like a lifelong book nerd. And,
Yes.
I didn't start seriously writing until 2014. Yeah.
I love that. I love
Heather
that.
has read 2 books tonight just during this.
I read a lot of books. Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thoroughly inspired and by both of you and both of your answers to that question. Chris, this is a winner, this question. We thank your friend. We have some questions from the audience. We have one from Sarah Sleeper. Chris, you want to pop it up on the screen?
Does either writer write in other genres, or poetry only for Morrow and fiction only for Heather?
So Morrow, what would you say?
That's an awesome question. I actually write graphic novels with my husband, who's an incredible artist.
Oh my God.
It's been like that has been the other thing that's been wonderful. And we haven't gotten to work on a project for a couple years, but we just got commissioned to do a really cool one for a historical site in our town.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah,
perfect question for you.
I know we've done a number of projects together. So I started out, poetry's always been my love, but in my failed attempt at an MFA program, failed because I ran away and went back to school. That's a whole nother story though. I actually went for fiction, even though I really loved poetry. So I have always written fiction along with poetry. So I get to do that with the graphic novels. We wrote one a few years ago called An Unlikely Refugee, which was about, of all things, a python in Vietnam who got rescued during the Vietnam War and was brought back to America. It's a true story.
Oh my God.
I wrote it from the snake's point of view, and it was so well liked that the Raleigh Museum of Natural Sciences actually has it as a permanent exhibit now, and the Smithsonian Institute also has a copy of our book. So
wow,
yeah,
it's awesome. That's awesome.
It is.
I don't know how many books get into the Smithsonian, like graphic novel, current.
Morrow, we need to put this in your bio. We need to get that in there. Well, you know what we discovered in this question? Thank goodness, with Sarah Sleeper. Thank you. Wow.
I know.
Fascinating, Morrow. That's incredible. That's so cool. Well, Heather, any writing in other genres?
Nothing as exciting as that. Well, I am focusing mostly on fiction, but I do write book reviews on several different websites and on my own blog. So when I'm reading all those books, I write about them too.
I love that. Yeah. That is so great. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is great. That's like, does that help you with your writing, to write a book review, or is it like, you talk about the 2 sides of the brain? Is it sort of like that's its own thing? And then, but other than the fact that of reading might inspire.
I think the reading more, the reading the book, I think, although I try to still enjoy the book. Like, I don't want to get too much in the writer brain when I'm reading, because it takes away the fun of it.
Yeah, but you got to keep that hat on, that writer hat.
I'm hoping it's going in by osmosis.
Yes.
Right. And some of it does, right?
Yeah, it does, for sure.
I firmly believe that. I mean, if somebody's in a workshop or somebody shows me their writing, I can tell if they haven't read a lot of books, because they just don't, they just don't have like that thing that as a kid and young person that you absorb. Just like the form. I mean, sometimes it's just like how do you write? Where do you indent? Sometimes it's like even as simple as that, but also I think people just absorb like how a book is supposed to look and feel and move. Same with musicians, songwriters and stuff. It's like you just kind of absorb it before you even know you want to do that. And then so you get to the point where you want to do that, it's kind of already in there. But so I think that does happen. Anyway, Chris Abate, our friend, in this definitely applies to both of you, but he says, great poems, Morrow. Would you talk about how your career and parenthood influence your writing? So Morrow, you.
Yeah, this is always an interesting question for me because, you know, I'm not even kidding when I say I ran away from my MFA program because I was suffering kind of from the whole imposter syndrome. I just felt like my writing was never going to be good enough. I felt like the workshops were so cutthroat and that we were all against each other, like not there to support each
Good
other.
Lord. Where did you go? Let's.
Do I have to say?
No, you don't have to
Just so
say.
people out there can avoid that one.
No, I mean, it's just my personal experience. I was at Emerson College up in Boston, and it's a great school. I mean, it's just my experience. Anyway, I ran away. I didn't know what I was going to do. My father had always wanted me to be a doctor. So I thought, well, I'll go back to school and do something in healthcare, which I did. Well, the funny thing was, there was this sense of relief at first when I ran from the MFA. But as soon as I started taking classes for medicine, I was like, no, wait, I do love writing. I really do. And it's pretty incredible. But like, I really started to write, like, I would consider myself like a professional writer in 2009 when I began my career as a PA. So the two, there's been since then like this push-pull where, I love my job in healthcare, but I really love writing. But I know that I couldn't make a living off the writing, but the career takes away from the writing. So it's this constant dance. And but the gift that I'm given over and over is that because I've transitioned now the past several years to working in mental health care. I mean, every day you talk about reading, absolutely, but every day I'm inundated with stories, incredible stories of people's lives and experiences. And, that, even though, again, I'm sensitive and not writing too much about specific patients, but that absolutely keeps me going in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And then becoming a parent, wow. Becoming a parent has been the most transformational experience of my life alongside the writing. I mean, in some ways, like the writing is like the beautiful slow burn, but my kids are like these gorgeous, massive firework explosions. I kind of took a break from writing the first few years that my daughter was born. But like I said, then I moved up here to Hillsborough and met these wonderful people who were part of Living Poetry. Chris is one of them. My friend Bart Barker, who's a great poet, is another one. And, they just immediately welcomed me and pulled me in, and their support really helped me to kind of get back to a regular writing regimen, despite the fact that now I had, kids and, a demanding job. So yeah, I mean, and my kids are a constant inspiration. I mean, I get to be a child all over again. It's cliche, but it's totally true. And the cool thing is, my childhood was a little screwy. So now I get to like enjoy being a child, like kind of fixing all that in a way. Yes. And my kids just, kids are just hilarious. They have the most incredible insights. And, I've written many poems, obviously didn't include too many, but about things they've done and said that have just been like, strikes you to the core. It's like, they don't even know how philosophical and poetic they are.
Yes. Oh, Morrow, so fascinating to learn all of these things about you, and they absolutely resonate. And, we know about a great low residency MFA program that has a very friendly and supportive community.
I have thought about it.
FUMFA, and it's low res.
You don't say.
Yeah.
No pressure. No pressure.
Not that, we have no
we're not
technically
we are not affiliated with them at all. But if you do go, we will get a percentage, right, Katie?
I wish. Actually, we are very intimately, again, I would say, like, associated. We love the program, and it has an incredible spirit from the very beginning. really wonderful community. And we used to talk about that, thank God it's not one of these programs that's like brutally competitive and very stifling. It was, a wonderful experience. And anyways, enough commercial. We need to ask Heather. We need to ask Heather this fabulous question. More fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah.
Heather,
So, I mean, obviously, I do get stories from my career. My first book was really based in the world in which I practice, which is breast imaging and breast cancer care. But my second book, I really had to kind of branch out a little bit and learn about neurosurgery because I'm not a neurosurgeon, but I have enough of the vocabulary and the understanding that I can read about it and bring it to the page. And then in terms of parenthood, my kids are also a great source of inspiration. The kids are teenagers. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. My 13-year-old shows up in Better to Trust. There's a character inspired by him when he was a little bit younger. And in my next book, there's a character that's inspired by my 15-year-old who is non-binary and goes by they and them. So I have a non-binary character in my next book. So
awesome.
Go.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, you can't just write about one of them.
No, I have to spread the wealth.
What a great question, Chris Avate. My mom has a question for Morrow. It's a bit similar to this one, but let's get Mom up there. She doesn't always ask a question. My mom.
That's true. Mom is very, very into this tonight. That's great.
And Mom is always here. They have perfect attendance. But were you a PA before you started writing poetry? And poetry was already in your life, but maybe you kind of transitioned to this different point when you did become a PA. Is what you were
because you were writing fiction mostly,
Yes.
even though you had wrote poems when you were a kid. Then somehow you got onto fiction, and you got into the to that angle, which of course is it's the better angle, right, Katie?
Chris, you better watch it.
I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
I'm the poetry half of this show.
But then you switch over to poetry, and I'm curious, like when you became a PA, then you did a I don't know if that's a 180, it's a 90 maybe, I don't know what it is. And how did that work, and what came first?
Well, I mean, I'd been writing poetry since I was 10. I won an award for like the 5th graders across the state when I was around that time, which was a great beginning to my career. But I mean, as a teenager, my work just, you know how teenagers are. It's like the diary page poetry, right? It's like nobody wants to read that crap.
Yep.
I had a really horrible experience with the first time I took a college level poetry workshop. And I mean, my work I was struggling emotionally and it came through the work, but this teacher was just, he'd made no bones. He was disgusted with my work. It was utter trash to him. And so I was, I didn't weather it well. I had no spine at the time, for that kind of criticism. So I got really scared. And then I took a couple really great workshops in college, but I think I just still didn't feel like that work was good enough to like take it to the next level. So it's funny though, because I always was writing way more poetry than fiction, but I went the fiction route for the MFA. I got into the program. So I was like, that's great. But I actually was always writing poetry while I was in that program, along with the short stories and novel I was working on. And then as soon as I became a PA and it was like, wow, this is real, not in school anymore. This is like the real deal. Part of me went through like pretty profound depression in a way that this was the path I had chosen, and I'd kind of given up that dream of being a real writer. And so as literally like when I began that first job, my poetry completely took off because it was my refuge. It was like, it was my soul refuge, from the kind of like technical and gritty and, and demanding aspects of the medical. I worked for an extremely busy primary care practice, like incredible pressure, incredible, demand. So yeah, I mean, it was a
Fascinating.
refuge, and it has continued to
Awesome.
be.
That is so awesome, Morrow. Thank you so much for sharing. Chris, we are getting close to
Yeah.
our famous last question time. Double question.
Yes. Okay. Let's do this. We'll ask Heather first.
Yes.
So it's a double question. First part of the question is a pearl of wisdom. We ask for a pearl of wisdom as a writer, advice for other writers, maybe young up and comers. Just what pops into your head, and then second part of the question is a book recommendation for all of us, not just
Any
the
book
up and
recommendation.
comers. Anything that strikes your fancy lately, or has meant something to you. So,
Okay.
pearl of wisdom, and then a book
All
recommendation.
right. All right. So my pearl of wisdom is if you want to write, don't try to do it by yourself. Find a community, and that community could be an in-person community. It could be an online community. It could be like a local workshop or virtual, or an association for whatever type of writing that you're doing. But whatever it is, like find some people that will help you, because otherwise it's just so solitary and you feel like you're doing something so hard completely on your own. And if you surround yourself with people who know how hard it is, it makes it a lot better.
Yes.
Heather, do you have any specific
I
recommendations?
mean, of course, the Westport Writers Workshop.
Yes.
Which really, like, honestly, for real, I could not have published 2 books without it. Major support for me.
Awesome. I love that.
Ka-ching. Okay, and a book recommendation.
Okay, so I read the most recent book that I read that completely blew me away was by an author named Kim Hooper, and the book is called No Hiding in Boise. And it's multiple points of view, which I love, and it centers around a traumatic event. It centers around a shooting in a bar in Boise, and the points of view are one of the bartenders who hid in the closet during the shooting, the mother of the shooter, and the wife of one of the victims who is in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And then the 3 points of view kind of weave together, and then the characters cross paths, and it's just beautiful and amazing.
Wow.
Really well done. So now I'm reading all of her backlist because I just thought it was so good.
Awesome.
Not too many books set in Boise, probably. And
I don't think I've ever read a book set in Idaho.
I like that. It's nice to read something different.
Yeah, it was really, really excellent.
Thank you so much.
So, Morrow, a pearl of wisdom and a book recommendation.
I can't agree more with what Heather said. And living poetry has been my, my group of people. And I definitely would not be doing the kind of work I am right now without their support. I think one of the best things that any writer can do is just to keep writing and reading as much as possible. I mean, even if you are working a day job or, some job tangential in the literary field, just making sure that you be professional about it, put aside time to write, and do it even when you don't feel like it. Even if you're just writing, like, here's what I see in the room, it helps. It just keeps that part of your brain moving. And read as much as you can, even things you don't like. Read old things, read new things, read foreign poetry, read things that are, more experimental. Everything feeds into, again, that part of your being. And then in terms of books, the first poetry book I ever bought for myself that wasn't assigned for a class was Sharon Olds' The Wellspring. And I love her. I think she's one of the more masterful confessionalist type poets. And she was the first poet who I felt really spoke to and validated my experience. Not only as a writer, but also a person. So I love her work. It's a great example of, being very passionate, being very personal, but in a way that is very accessible to others.
Yes.
Great recommendation.
Totally great recommendation and fabulous pearls of wisdom from both of you. Thank you so much, Morrow Dowdle and Heather Frimmer, for joining us tonight. One more round of applause, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Oh, it really, really was incredible to hear both of you, both of your work. And thank you so much for our audience for joining us tonight and for the fabulous questions. Chris, what do we have coming up next week again? Remind
Next
us.
week, fall open mic night. We're gonna have just a cornucopia
Woo!
fabulous writers. Too many to name here.
Look for the post going up tomorrow.
Great. It's gonna be
But yes, thank you again to Morrow Dowdle and Heather Frimmer. Go and buy their books. Go and follow them on social media, on their socials, or look them up, please. And we will see you on next Sunday night. Have a fabulous week, everyone.